little bit about we're live now. I want to welcome everybody. It is 7 o'clock. Go time for us here at Intelligent Construction Opportunities. I'm Stephanie Brown. My guest tonight is Adam Stark, co-founder of Jet.Build, who has, in my opinion, a really very unique way of approaching project management from the asset manager down through all the other pieces of the construction chain that would use his kind of application. And so we're going to wait for people to come on. As far as I know, there's nobody here at the moment. So Adam, I just want to, talk a little bit tonight about who your prime users are, what made you want to start this application, and what are some of the challenges that they have that you think as you evolve this app, Jet.Build, you're going to be able to address?
Totally. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. Really excited for this live webinar that we're doing here in this chat. So what I always laugh about on kind of any question almost, unless it's super direct, is there's so many angles to take all of these questions because our industry is vast. So I want to say, first of all, our prime, I'll call it, our prime client will be the developer, right? So it's the owner. However, the most, I'll call it a broad user base are the teams involved in the development process, right? So it's a kind of funny answer where the license holder will typically be the owner builder, so the developer. And then
give us an example, like, throw around some names. I mean, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it does not be names of the people, but, developer names, whether they're a consortium or whatever they are.
Yeah, so for sure. So typically it's like a small SMB, small medium business, family office type a developer, doing anything from multifamily, high rise, industrial, you name it. So that'll be the license holder and their team, which typically makes up of lesser of the overall user base of Jet.Build. And the overall user base of Jet.Build tends to be your design team, so like your architects and your engineers, and then your contracting teams, so everyone between your general contractor to all of the subcontractor trades, who of course are all project stakeholders and have relevance to collaborate on the platform on Jet.Build.
So staying on our topic of accountability, when you really are being pressed and you witness a project and, okay, fair enough, they can use Jet.Build or they can use some similar kind of product to help them, what kind of accountability or who's dropping the ball, so to speak? Where do you find the most disjointedness between those three areas, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it almost is equal in the sense that, the developer side, so the ownership side, has responsibility in replying to changes in a project, whether that's an RFI request, whether that's a literal change order or schedule shift, right? To the, as we all know, the design team, whose documents are not always actual to constructability, right, to literal job site construction, which then bounces back to our contracting teams, right? So everybody, we could point the finger to one party, but the reality is, and, I think why we tend to see, disconnect between productivity and efficiency in our industry is that, the reality is everybody has to not point fingers at each other, rather, realize that they are accountable for the collective actions, right? So in recognizing that, and I'll take one big step back and I think answer a question that I didn't in your initial question, in the sense of why Jet.Build, right? How did we come up with this idea? Why are we here? Why are we talking about this? Well, my co-founder and I, Joseph, shout out to him. I think he's on here somewhere. Both of us were working in real estate development in New York City. So we're working for developers. And on a very hands-on type of role. So we were on construction job sites every day, and we were responsible for the productivity of jobs, of projects. So that's everything between ensuring that, we're talking about accountability, ensuring that the contractor trades are responding to questions that they're being asked of, and that questions that they're asking to the design teams, for example. So we had to ensure that the design teams were answering. And then accountability wrapped around and pointed its finger at us, right? Coming from the developer side, when we had to respond to questions, or when we had to come up with payments on time to ensure a project is progressing. So all of that crazy scenario and lots of words that I just said, bottom line there is that we didn't have a tool, we didn't have a solution for everybody to just input their information, assign these workflows and due dates and such, so that each manager or each accountable party from all of these stakeholders can simply log on and in 2-3 clicks understand what they are responsible for in this collective project process.
So where do you find the most resistance? Because in my own work, I feel that there is a chasm between the kind of roles that you pursue with Jet.Build on the project owner side, on the, the owner's rep, what have you. And when you get down to the foreman and you get down to the trades, they're like, no, that's not possible. So either how do you think in the big picture that starts to get rectified? Because you have a developer background yourself, and that is one of the reasons I'm fascinated in having this conversation with you, because you're one of the rare builders of a construction application that understands it as you've just described. So how are we going to make it better that the developer who's dealt with the bank and the lenders and all of that, and knows that the buck stops and his vision is this and his vision is that, or, the group's vision, or could be her now, I suppose. I would imagine that's a little more few and far between, but nonetheless, whoever has the power and the money and said, I'm going to build X, how do we make that trickle down and back up again to the actual people that have to make the building a building?
Totally. So first I'll address kind of usability of a solution, right? A solution, generally speaking. So going back, referencing, my experience again, the reason that I was not able to adopt a product when I was working in the industry, same with my co-founder, is I'll call it 2 friction points. One is difficulty of product. So, you're talking about usability of the foreman, of the site super, et cetera. Well, let's stop providing them a product that is, a certificate-based solution, meaning you have to go through training, extensive training to understand how to use it. Well, that's just not going to work on scale, right, for mass. So that's one. And then second was unattainable price point. So taking those kind of 2 scenarios and then wrapping it into our own experience and our own kind of vision here is what we've done is we've first of all created a scalable price method, right? So it could be cost effective for any size of builder company. And then second is simplicity, first and foremost, and most importantly so. And what I mean by that is if you could imagine, a technology that was created in the late 90s or early 2000s, well, that was a much more complicated kind of just face value use case than your smartphone is today. So that's kind of the approach that we're coming at this, I'll call it industry friction with, which is to say, you open up Jet and permissions can be made such that your responsibility on the product is understood within an hour of just simple onboarding and training of.
So give us an idea, because a lot of people throw that word around, onboarding. For Jet, what does that mean? And how are you making sure that if, somebody buys Jet.Build today, that the project that they're on a year and a half from now that hadn't begun when they bought Jet.Build, that new crew, understands how to use your application for the purpose that I'll say in this sense, the owner rep might have purchased it for?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a few ways of addressing that scenario. First of all, if a project is a year and a half out or whatever, an extended amount of time away, then we have literally a free license, which is for essentially pipeline or this kind of pre-con stage. So minimal friction in that regard. Second is let's say that the license holder did purchase a license and wants to start ramping up, even though the project start is far away. Well, what we do is, first of all, onboard internal teams, but then beyond that, what we recommend and what we, truly ask for our clients to allow us is to onboard external teams. So that allows for, just simply and naturally so better collaboration. If the license holder is allowing us to onboard any of the external parties. So let's say if the developer is a license holder, we ask them to send us the information so we can onboard their architects and their engineers, so that we can onboard their owner's rep if they have one. We can onboard their GC, et cetera. So that's kind of how we create that ecosystem of understanding. And we can also train those parties to the role that they're going to have access with, if that makes sense.
So tell us a little story then. I want you to give us an example. Can be, that lovely word, use case, whatever. When we start talking about, give us a story about somebody that you've onboarded and how it actually works in the day-to-day.
Yeah, definitely. So on a recent case, and I actually thought about this before coming on because I figured it's a great just example of how this works, the onboarding scenario and ramp up.
Yeah.
So we onboarded a very small internal team, multifamily builder in the tri-state area. We approached them and say, hey, we see your usage. Why don't you send us your external parties? We'll onboard them. They advise they're still in that kind of pre-con, they're not yet ready stage. However, they're still leveraging their CRM, essentially their directory. They're leveraging file management, drawing management, et cetera. And then the moment that they were prepared to start the project, meaning actually have breaking ground and operations on site, that's when all of a sudden we had an onboarding of about 30 external parties. And
so tell us who they were. What roles did they play? What job, what kind of experience did they have? Who was more experienced? Who was less experienced?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, truthfully, it's not as though we dug into each individual to be able to say to that extent. However,
you will be in the future, Adam.
Totally. I'd be happy to. But just on like face value of what we did understand and what was clear was kind of those examples I was giving was it was design team and the GC kind of, I'll call it main team. So on that onboarding process, we ran through functions that they would be leveraging on the product based on their permissions, meaning based on what the license holder advised. And then they're off and running, right?
Let me back up for a second. Who is the license holder? Who's got the power and who's the one saying, boys, girls, get your apps out. You're downloading this thing. Who is that and who drives the train?
Definitely. And this actually answers one of the questions that you had asked before, I went on my ramble there, which is, how do we enforce or how do we mandate or ensure that trickle down effect occurs? Well, our answer to that, or our vision to address that question, is that, the developer is our client. And the reason we say that is if the use of this product is coming top down per se, then it's, just naturally so more enforceable than if, for example, a contractor came on and said, hey, everyone use this product. I think then it turns into a finger pointing game. So in terms of enforcing or ensuring that its use is happening, well, if the person paying everyone is issuing reminders, issuing responsibility through a platform, then everybody, must therefore respond on that platform in order to, get paid, right? So,
and that makes sense. So I'm curious, is there any way that Jet has built anything in that makes it friendly from the owner's rep or the developer themselves, the family, whoever it is that, holds the license, as you say, how they bring people on board? And that's where I think is the opportunity for a lot of development companies like yourselves to get better at the onboarding? I feel that there has to be a more friendly way to get people to understand, not just that they're going to get paid faster, not because some of those are cliches now. And I think we have to work a little harder to really put yourself in the shoes of the trades so that it's more, to me, painting a vision. And if the developer can help you vis-a-vis the app to make that clear, that not only, yes, fine, I'm the guy that pays you, so you best be downloading this, but it's also about that builder being able to build more buildings and therefore make better work, and therefore making investments into perhaps Scrum, into perhaps Tact, into perhaps Lean, into perhaps those other applications that are trying to make their work eased, if you will. We have enough issues with supply chain and the global issues that keep forcing that, whether it's pandemic or wars or what have you. That's what I hope we can keep working on, and that's why Intelligent Construction Opportunities in my company wants to be the conduit between the software developer and what the true realities are on any given construction site, as different and varied as they can be.
Definitely. Yeah. So first of all, I mean, your kind of response helped me realize that I was almost approaching the scenario, and I could have given this context in the sense that if in the case that you have trades or other stakeholders unwilling to use a product, then it's effective for the mandate to come top down, right? However, with that said, and that aside, that's kind of the angle I was addressing. With that aside, it's becoming more and more of an established expectation across the industry that there is going to be a collaborative management tool on a project, right? So if everybody is coming onto a project, all of the stakeholders are starting a project with that expectation, and they look at Jet, for example, then they're immediately seeing, oh, this is way simpler than other products that I've seen, right? Other products that I've used. Oh, I can immediately now understand, because it's taken me minimal time to use this. Now I can immediately understand, oh, it's allowing me efficiency. It's increasing my productivity. It's giving me more time to focus on other things because, its use case is effective.
Right. But again, I do think at the onboarding stage, that to me, that for me in my own experience, that's where the real rubber meets the road. Because you can have somebody, no matter, it could be any other app doing any other thing, and the license holder could be the GC instead of the owner's rep or the developer or whoever that license holder is. But it really does have to trickle down in a real and sensitive way to the people that are using that application. And I think that's often the miss once the quote unquote sale is done. And so again, getting back to this idea of responsibility, if you sort of take Jet, what are the perspectives that you're building in that are going to, and I'm talking future now, because maybe they're not there right now. And I know you've just recently done your website, and at any moment, if you want to, bring it up and we can share a little bit about, what you do or how we break it down. I know we want to get into RFIs a little bit and sort of focus on the value of the submittal. If we can, sort of talk about that a little bit in terms of the responsibilities of who holds it and how does that trickle down to make sure that, the right information is there at the right time.
Definitely. Even before jumping into that, as in terms of onboarding, I 100% agree with you. And we do our best to ensure that we have an opportunity to assist with onboarding all project stakeholders And sometimes that's a trickle effect, meaning as project progresses, different stakeholders can, become involved in the project. Always happy for that kind of continual onboarding process, internal or external. So definitely agree with you. Always room for simplifying that.
So let's. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little
Sure.
bit. Oh, you've got somebody, I don't know, a pipe fitter, and he doesn't. What does he care about Jet.Build? I mean, yeah, he knows he's going to get paid, and as far as he's concerned, he better get paid. So what would you do to help if you were hearing, from the license holders, whoever they may be on that particular example, how would you work to make sure that pipe fitter is heard and understood, so that not only the benefits are understood of Jet.Build to the developer, but kind of what's in it for him?
Yeah, definitely. So for that person, for example, I'll touch it in two ways. First of all, they're functioning in some kind of a process, right? If they need to ask a question, they need to create like we've been talking about, like an RFI or submittal or a change order or something, right? In some capacity, send it to whoever they're reporting to, and allow that to go to whatever direction or stream that it may. If it's to the architect to approve, or the engineer to approve or deny something, or to return with more information, or to the owner for them to say, yeah, I'm okay with this change of cost or schedule, et cetera. So for that person, what we're saying is, well, here we've literally simplified what you're anyways going to do, because here you have structure, and it's a matter of clicks rather than producing something from scratch, essentially. Submit it accordingly, and you'll have a response quicker than you otherwise would. So in their perspective, it's still simplifying their role. With that said, typically, whoever that specific, I'll call it niche of a job is reporting to, whoever they're reporting it to is typically who we would be interacting with in terms of onboarding them. Granted, very happy to onboard literally everyone and anyone to show them kind of dynamic of their needs. But typical process would be on the managerial perspective, so that they can then onboard their teams.
So is the licensor always in the room when you might have this conversation, or what? I mean, I guess it depends on the case, but.
So yeah, I mean, if they want to, but actually typically not. Like typically they'll, for example, license holder will say, hey, here's my plumbing team. Hey, here's my, architect team. Take them, schedule with them, on board, et cetera. You don't need me. So that is typically the case, unless for some reason they want to be on the call, but typically they don't, because they don't need to be.
So of your levels, speaking of architects and engineers, what would you say is maybe the top 3 things that you feel Jet can help them with?
Definitely. So, well, funny in that question is that I've gone through projects where architects were functioning very much like a overall project manager, and then I've gone through projects where architects are doing things that are just very specific to their architect role.
Yeah.
So it obviously could split in those ways, and I'm sure there's a bunch of different in betweens there. So of course, if they're managing a lot of process, then the answer is quite obvious, and they're overseeing a lot of workflows and such. If they're specific to an architect role, if the engineer is specific to their engineering role, then typically what they'll be focusing on are things that are addressed to them. So it could be, again, this RFI or submittal process, like we've been noting, could be file and drawing management and sharing. It could be their own project budgets, specific to whatever their budget is, as well as their invoices and payment applications. So things that would address their specific roles are reflected on Jet.
I just want to say a quick hello to my buddy Steve Turner. These days, he's my partner in crime from Bring Back the Trades. Thanks, Steve, for hopping on. It matters. You know it better than anybody. All of this matters. Just to give him a quick shout out, Steve is the founder of Bring Back the Trades. And that's why I personally, Adam, are sort of asking you and digging into the trades, because I feel with technology, there over the period of, the growth of it, I'll say in the last 10, 15 years, there's been a lot of hit and misses with the trade specifically. So Steve, we really appreciate you jumping on. And I just want to give a quick shout out that we're working on an event at the Seacoast School of Technology in New Hampshire for April the 15th. We've got some really, really cool trades happening. We're finally breaking away from the traditional HVAC and electrical to start to move into areas like water pumps and wells and mining equipment. It all matters. It all matters, and it should all matter. And I'm sure it does, Adam. I mean, whatever developer you're going to work with tomorrow, who knows what they're putting up and who knows what they're going to need. And with that, I'd like to segue a little bit. You just redid your website, and I really like your little menu of stuff. So if you want to kind of take over here and flip open one of your screens, please feel free to do, and I'll make sure that it hits the screen for our audience.
Yeah, definitely. So we did do our website.
For some of those late comers, I just want them to know, Adam, that you're not only the co-founder and developer of Jet.Build, which is a project management platform that is done from the perspective of the real estate developer and the people that actually have the money to dream these things and want to build things. And that's the unique perspective that you bring to it. And Adam's going to bring up some of the uses for his particular platform from that perspective.
Definitely. So website is there. I'm going to leave it for anyone to take a look at whenever they want or don't want. Rather, I'll jump into kind of the back end of our product. We've been talking about RFIs a lot. So I'm going to run through what I would do, in the perspective of, having involvement in a project, how I would run through RFIs and a few other items.
So terrific.
Here. Cool. My screen should be shared. Let me know that you see it.
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm going to do a few things really quick. I might be clicking through things very fast. I'll try to slow it down a little bit, but at the same time, I do want to reflect how quick and easy it is to access. Right, the theme of our discussion here is accountability.
Fantastic. All right, you know what? I'm going to go big now. I made it very large. I don't know what effect, honestly, that has on our audience, but I want them to be able to see things as you're able to describe things.
Totally. So right here on the overview page for a single project, immediately you can understand just from the red, even if you can't read it, for example, just the red and the yellow, these are things that need to be addressed, of course, right? So immediately I'll go ahead and jump in to RFIs, where you'll see the overview page of all of project RFIs. And I'll do a few things. One is I'll sort by status. So now I have all of overdue items as well as open items. I'll select these, push out an email reminder. So now everybody who's involved with those RFIs just received an email saying, hey, reminder that these are overdue with basic details. Click the link, and then that link will bring them to this correspondence page where you can see some back and forths have occurred. Where you can see, for example, title, who created this, when it was sent, when the due date is. Of course, due date is in the past, so it's overdue now. You can review your workflow, right? So assigning responsibility, as well as see who ball in court, meaning who is responsible for this being overdue right now. That happens to be our support team.
So now, what job role in this particular instance would be analyzing and looking at this particular information in your experience with Jet?
For sure. So I would say typically this would come from a trade. So this is a gas booster needed. So you can take potentially a plumber installing a gas booster, asking for information on, literal details of the spec that they receive versus what they're seeing on the site, and the ability to either purchase that product, as you see here, per supplier availability, as well as how that impacts the install of that product. Which also, by the way, complications that exist in our environment is, okay, now we have an alternative product. Is that going to delay schedule because of supply chain issue? Is that going to change a price? Because now we're purchasing something different, maybe for better, for worse, maybe it's the same. So lots of complications occur even on the smallest things that nonetheless need to be addressed. So rather than this correspondence occurring via, handwritten notes or email chains or phone calls, all of a sudden we have this template that for anyone who's, inputting the RFI can now input this basic information in a simple way, right? If they know how to use a computer, they very well know how to enter, a title and what the.
So I'm going to ask you that question that I've heard from trades, and one guy in particular. How many clicks, if you had to, to actually get through this particular workflow that you're showing?
Sure.
How much time and how many clicks are we going to say are involved in what you're demonstrating?
Definitely. So I'm going back one screen to our landing page for RFIs.
Yeah.
You'll see here, add RFI. So you saw it took one click to get to an RFI, right?
Right.
At the same time, by the way, if you were responding to an RFI, then it would be one click to go into that correspondence. So you would have skipped the landing page step. So to correspond, it's literally one click. Now to create an RFI, this is click 2, add RFI. Now you're entering your information, and click 3 would be literally to add that RFI, right? So I mean, it could be pretty minimal where you have.
I think that's reasonable personally,
Right.
but
Awesome.
Again, okay. And so again, devil's advocate. So how many times in a day would this be touched by your average client, Jet's average client?
So RFIs and submittals are our most used features. With that said, we have it's a really amazing number. It's something, the literal number is escaping me, but it's between 98% and 99% in terms of on-time return rate. So you asked about simplicity. So, evidently based on our own internal data, evidently, it's being used in an effective means. And that's to say people are entering RFIs or submittals and they're receiving responses accordingly. So really awesome data point that we really focus on a daily basis, along with all of these other data points across our product, where, we really try our best to ensure, simplicity at its finest, so that, efficiency could occur. So before we close out here, I'm going to do a few more accountability pieces.
Yes.
So we saw that correspondence feature. Now you see this send button. So what this does is, for example, when you finish an RFI, you now have the ability, meaning when you've closed it out, you now have the ability to send that closed version to, recipients by group. So if that's, contractor team or by individuals, you could go ahead and do so, meaning not everyone needs to be involved in that back and forth. However, probably more people need to understand the final result of that RFI or submittal. So that's one way of ensuring that people can't, give the response of, oh, I got lost in the back and forth. Rather, no, you're pushing out a final version for everyone to reference immediately. Do
you keep a history of previous revisions and so?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're seeing here, what I'm about to show you, is I went back to the correspondence. So when you accept something as final, everyone now has received an email also saying, a final version has been accepted. That accepted response is always on the bottom left and timestamped. So always accessible to understand when something is finalized, what is the final version, without scrolling through, correspondences, which in its alternative world would be email chains. So that capacity is super simple and quick to access and execute as it relates to accountability and referencing. Another thing you can do is print a PDF where you'll see all of, your RFIs, sorted by how I just sorted it with overdue on top. So you can send this in an email. You could bring this to a meeting and log it in meeting minutes where you're assigning additional tasks for people to respond to. And beyond those elements, what you could also do is reporting, right? So I'm going to go to now RFI and submittal snapshot, run report. I mean, that was, depending on where you started counting, between 2 clicks and 3, maybe 4 clicks. And here you have a report of, overview of your RFIs and submittals, as well as line item in terms of status, who's responsible, how many days it's overdue, title, etc. So yet another means of understanding, accountability across the stakeholders on your project.
Is there any way for you to potentially customize any of these fields? What if, you've got some kind of developer who's very seasoned and has a certain way of doing his projects, his or her projects, or the consortium's projects? I mean, could be Brookfield. I mean, they've been, an entity like that certainly has their processes. So what kind of customization could be potentially here?
Yeah, definitely. So, I'll go back into, I'll go to submittals just as, bring you another screen. It looks very similar to RFIs. However, it reflects versions of the submittals.
Okay.
So what I wanted to show is that, recognize everything that you've seen is really this element of inputs and outputs. And what I mean by that is, the top category bar is static, but everything else is really up to you. So, the title is up to you. The information that's involved, whether that be, about section, the files, who's receiving it, etc. I mean, you're really leading the inputs to whatever, specifics that you have.
Okay. I mean, it sort of answers my question. So what would you say of the menu on the left-hand side? What would be a more common workflow that you would see if you were new to Jet, and how you would start to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most common workflows would have run through the RFI and submittal process as you saw it. I think maybe another element to touch on would be the directory, so that you can just gauge an understanding as it relates to kind of users and what that means. I mentioned access control a bunch of times. So here you can see, assigning people access to these functions. So in ways that kind of dictates, or dictates workflows, in the sense that if you have your contracting teams, not on the accounting functions, then their workflows will be specific to construction functions or collaboration functions, for example.
And of course, this is all permission based, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
On an individual and or on a group basis.
Okay. So I want to know, from the use cases you've had and the clients you have, what tend to be the sectors and the typical kind of project? Are they electrical contracting entities? Are they utilities? Are they commercial? Are they mixed use? What are they in terms of the kinds of projects?
Yeah, great question. We really have a range of projects. I would say that really the only project type that we haven't gone super far into yet is industrial, heavy industrial. Otherwise, we really have everything that you mentioned, whether it's mixed use, high rise, multifamily, single family, warehouse. So really a vast mix of builds.
So I want to know, from a trend perspective, the economy seems to still be a big question mark every other day from the stock market's perspective. It's going to crash, not going to crash. Oh no, we're stable today. Oh no, look, Facebook Meta laid off 10,000 people today. Just a regular day in the metaverse. So where do you see your app in maybe a year?
Mm-hmm.
And where do you see the trajectory of construction applications in maybe 5 years? And I mean everything. I mean, I'm talking drones, I'm talking robotics, I'm talking all of it, because I'm all about understanding that the labor opportunity deficit, however you want to describe it, is not going to go away. And so I'm just curious to know what you feel about the trends and how you feel that construction technology fits within that.
Certainly. So this actually ties into another reason why our thesis is what it is, in the sense that we're, targeting developers to onboard us as the tech backbone, the essential tech backbone. And what that means is it'll cover these essential needs first and foremost. Second is it'll cover these essential data points like that RFI and submittal snapshot that we saw real quick. Once that's established, now we can really push industry forward and truly start to leverage in a higher degree or a more significant degree these alternative products, like you mentioned, whether it relates to drones, whether it relates to AI safety tools, automated predictive analytics, which is something we're building for as well once we have sufficient data. So the reason I say that is typically a lot of these tools are going to be used by trade specific teams. So what we've done is establishing this backbone essential structure is now all of a sudden you could plug in this ESG reporting, you could plug in the drone scenario to feed that data through your entire project, you could plug in your site safety AI, and so on and so forth. So without the essential kind of platform that's going to consolidate this information and push it through what is your main hub for your project, you're going to be pulling from siloed data points and siloed functions, which could be useful for those trades in particular for their own function. However, probably not as effective as a collaborative project need, going back to the beginning of our conversation as it relates to that finger pointing, right? So the concept is to say, let's actually leverage everyone's data. Let's understand how to create efficiency across the teams, because everyone's performance impacts one another on a construction site, at least almost always. And from there, we could really start to drive technology and how information is used and how we could predict issues because of what we've seen in hindsight. So that's kind of what I see happening as well. So I'm answering like that in the sense of our vision, what we're building for, what we've built, and how I see the industry going.
And again, it all makes sense, but it's in the details. I find myself that technology is built from a perspective, and I believe your perspective is from the real estate developer, the asset manager's perspective. We're also going to see an evolution in the facilities management, so that, as you mentioned, predictive, right? So that the building tells you before the problem exists, or certainly right when the problem exists, in a way it never did before. But I do think that we have to still continue to do a better job of making sure that the human element knows that these technologies are there to help them and that we need their input. Correct. I don't believe they can be built in silos by people that understand computer languages and haven't had the experience of the builder. And I think that's our opportunity, and that will continue to be the gist of Intelligent Construction Opportunities. It's one of the major reasons that I am grateful for the opportunity to work with Steve Turner at Bring Back the Trades, because I want to be on the ground with the challenges. Because I do think when technology works, given even tonight, even though I'm not sure our chat is working as well as I would have liked, note to audience, whoever's listening, that these kinds of things would never be possible. I mean, you're in New York, correct?
Correct.
I'm in Toronto. I mean, it's great when it works and it's mysterious, but we have to keep making it serve people. And in my opinion, that, Chat GPT is a great example of, yes, the algorithms are getting smarter because they've got storehouses of all the information that came from us and encyclopedias and all the directories and all the assets and resources that these big companies like Google bought up a long time ago. But by the same token, we're human, so therefore there's emotions involved, and to me, we have to find ways to thread them in. I have to say, good for you, Adam, when you showed how many clicks, for example. I think that's a major thing, because you've got so many tradespeople whose job it is to make sure that sheetrock is hung right, not to have to be looking at an app and going, it told me to do this and I did that, but it didn't do that. But I'm behind, and now the sheetrock is, a day late, So anyway, I could go on, and I won't, but I want to thank you very much, because I think this was, I always try not to give a software demonstration in these live streams, but I do think if they're done properly, all we're doing is sharing information and trying to give the context of the developer to the construction professional. And I think personally, you've done a very good job of that this evening, Adam. So I thank you for that. And I don't see any other questions or any comments in the chat, which, I don't know why. I will say that Adam and I will be working together to make sure that there is a takeaway from tonight that is going to be helpful, as much as it could be an opportunity for us to work with you and, give you a more customized drive of Jet.Build and what that might look for your company in whichever way you want that to be. So with that, I'm gonna call it a night and thank everybody who took their time tonight and their interest to get on tonight and hear us out. And we shall continue the conversation.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, Adam. Good night, everybody.